I wanted to do a quick recap for you on some of the things we looked at in the Bach Prelude in D major from Cello Suite No. 1. So we talked a lot about harmony and how that can influence or inform our interpretation. So the first 4 bars, we talked quite a bit about this. We have D, G, A7, and D again. So we have a 1, 4, 5, 1 progression. So in terms of the direction of the phrase dynamically, it's really, the peak is really there. I mean, there's not really much disputing that, you know, if you play D major, and then you play G, and then you play A7, and then you go back to D, there's a little kind of story in just those first 4 bars. Now remember, in terms of analysis, that we've got these pedal notes here, so these Ds, you know, we're not going to necessarily include them all in the analysis of the chords. So you need to kind of look at the top parts there. Alright, so that's the first 4 bars in a nutshell. Here, now we go to, let's look at the next 4 bars. So B minor, here we get an E7 chord, that's the dominant of what's coming next, which is A. That's A major, you can see with the G sharp. And then it goes to B minor here. So if we just quickly talk about those chords, remember that B minor is like the antithesis of D major. It's the polar opposite. So D major could be something like grandeur and majesty, and B minor something like lamenting, you know, deep sadness, something like that. Think of the first movement of La Cathédrale by Barrios, you know. Right? So D major, grandeur and majesty, and now B minor. But then it quickly changes. This is the thing about Bach. He quickly changes, cycles through keys. So then we go to E7, and then to A major. So we're back to a major key, and it's A major. So A major has a different tint, different inflection to D major. Let's go to fundamental harmony. Now we've looked at 3 different keys. So let's go to my book. So D major. I'm not going to read all of these quotes, but just quickly, words like majesty, grandeur, pomp. I think, you know, that sort of fits the key. Now, the prelude wasn't originally written in D major. It's been transcribed to D major for the guitar. I think it was originally in C major. So that's maybe something to think about. But the fact that it's in D major does affect how it comes out musically. It affects its character and mood. So B minor now, very melancholy, quiet expectation and patient hope. Completely different. They share the same key signature, but very, very different feelings behind them. And then A major, we can just go, yeah. So A major, I like this, full of confidence and hope. Alright, so we talked about this. B minor, E7 is sort of the gateway towards A major, and then A major is confidence and hope, and then we go back to B minor. So that's again a sort of a soft color. So you could have something like piano, crescendo, forte for the A minor, and then a deep crescendo and a piano for the B minor. That works quite well. Harmonically, I think it fits. It makes a very clear shape, just like with the first 4 measures. Now we have a very clear structure for the second 4 measures. So looking to the next line, something a little bit different. The idea of following the shape of the line. So what is the melody doing in its shape, and let's follow it dynamically. So if you just you know, it's rising and then it's falling, just sort of following it rough, you know, doesn't have to be too specific, but just the rough general direction of the line. So that's going to sound, you're going to start soft. Right, so there's lots of micro shapings. It's not the most obvious type of dynamic, lots of little micro shapes that create some interesting dynamic shapes. So here we arrive at another point of modulation, and with modulation it helps to think about where is the modulating, where's the goal of the modulation, which, you know, in this case I think it's here. So it's E minor. It's quite clear. It's E minor. So that can help us sort of predict what this is going to be, and usually it's going to be the dominant of that key. So this is B7. You know, they've got this C, which is like a passing tone, beautiful. Beautiful passing tone of the C there. Very, almost like a bit tortured in the harmony. And then we get to E minor. So, you know, generally the seventh chord would be loud, tension, and then this would be a resolution, more piano. And then the next two measures sort of reflect the same thing but in another key. So if we look at what's coming here, it's B minor. So we can predict what's the dominant of B minor. So B, C, D, E, F, and that's F sharp 7. So same kind of, you know, that could be a similar kind of interpretation. All right, so that would sound like. Back to that lamenting type of character in the B minor chord. Okay, and then the next section, now it's changing up a little bit here. So if we think of what this harmony is and what this harmony is, and then here we kind of have a bit of a journey. So this is like an A7, it's a dominant chord. This is a D7, another dominant, cycling through dominance here a little bit. And then we get to a G chord here, but it's in second inversion with the D in the bass. So it's a bit unstable. And then we get to this A7 with the D in the bass. So lots of sevenths, lots of unstable harmonies. It's like I feel like he's kind of meandering a little bit, because you've got seventh to another seventh to an unstable chord to another seventh. So meandering. But I do feel like, you know, that's sort of in one way, it's a sort of a goal of all the meandering. And then here we get to the D, follow the shape of the line, decrescendo. Beautiful harmony, you know, with this, especially with the cross string fingering, if you're using that. And that's sort of that's an E7 chord. Again, it's going to be, I think, a little bit of meandering, E7, and then here we have an A7 chord with the seventh in the bass. So again, it's sort of meandering. I feel like this whole section here is a lot about meandering, whereas the first page there are like really clearly defined goals to the harmony. So A7 with the seventh in the bass, so very tense harmony in a way, and he just carries on all the way up to here. So that's a very clear stopping point, especially with the rhythm. And then here we're going to talk about, you know, following the shape of the line. We also talked about agogic accenting, which is like bringing out the accents where phrases start and finish. So this phrase, and then it restarts, and then it restarts here up to there, and we get this really, well, that's a very, you know, that's a very tense moment there with the B flat over the A. So you can kind of linger on that B flat, you know, bring that out. So we've had following the shape of the line, you know, it's all going up, and then it starts to go down. And he's doing a dominant bass. So, you know, this prelude is in the key of D major as a whole, and this section is a dominant pedal point. So we get all these A's, and you know, it's quite a typical thing for Bach to do. So just all these, you know, following the shape line, get this beautiful, nice, rich chord there. Now we talked about how Baroque musicians would avoid the interval of an augmented second, which is F to G sharp. So F to G sharp, you know, you wouldn't interpret it melodically like that. Instead, the G sharp, I think, is another voice, and these three notes there are another voice too. So you got, and then very, very unusual. So that kind of interrupts the hearing the augmented second interval right next to, from one note to another, right next to each other. And then we have the E being one thing, and then these three notes. So you can kind of see a pattern there. You've got this like note, and then a figure that goes, you know, down and back up from F, E, F. And then you have F, and then you got, and you have E, and then you know, sustain the E preferably. And then the D. So this is called compound melody as well, where you have, so you've got this compound melody, something like that. Compound melody, and then you've got this other voice there. So you create layers when you do that. He's still pedaling on this A bass. And then we finally, I think, reach a new section here. So again, we talked about agogic accenting, making the phrases pop out, and following the shape of the line. So this is all coming down. So and then he's actually still pedaling the A, which is amazing. What such a long dominant pedal point. Pedaling the A, and then so this is actually a static line. He's just staying still, and then here we start to get these beautiful rising lines. So I'm gonna start from here. So static. And then it starts to rise. And that's the first cutoff point. And then it's cutting, he's using these sort of asymmetrical and now the melody is starting to fall. obviously, you know, this is a big crescendo up. Just follow the shape of the line. And so on. You could do a little bit of a slow down a little bit just to, you know, because this is almost like a little coda. It's this beautiful ending section. It's, you know, it's 4 measures like the start, and it's also interesting to look at the harmony. He's still pedaling the dominant, which is amazing, doing it for so long. He's able to continue doing that for such a long time. Pedaling dominant, and the harmony, so this is a D chord, this is like an A chord with a sus4 with that, and then that resolves here to become an A7 chord, and then we finally get the D. So in terms of the harmony, you could play the chords together, and just to like you, at the opening, you can get a feeling for the harmonies at the end here. Hear that progression as you play the arpeggios, arpeggioed chords. And we talked about projecting this sort of melodic line above everything else, so that you really get so that there is that in a nutshell. You know, mostly talking about looking at the harmonies, looking at the chords, and informing our interpretation based on the chords. And I think what that does also is it changes how you hear the piece too, because then you start to hear, just like we talked about in this last bit here, you start to hear progressions rather than, you know, things happening one bar at a time. You start to hear these larger progressions, and it becomes much more shapely and much more coherent, and much more of a story, I think, much more of a journey that you can take the listeners on. So I hope this has helped reinforce the points we've worked on in our lessons, and it's gone really great, and see you later. Cheers.